All right, we're live. Thanks for popping in. Who's out there? How's everybody doing? Everybody going crazy, keeping active, staying away from boredom, brushing up on your skills. We'll wait a few minutes, see who joins in, see if anybody's out there. Brendan, how are you? Dan Doak, what's happening? Hey guys, hope you all are staying healthy, staying busy, taking this time to get caught up on things. Bob Graves, thanks for joining. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I assume you can hear me. Audio okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Just want to make sure, get everything technically dialed in. Bob Ray is washing my hands. I tell you, my hands are so chapped from washing them. Washed them so much. Scrubbed the garage floor today, scrubbing everything. Carol Boss, thanks for tuning in. Things are going on. Let's see, I just saw a question pop in about the FJ400. Cheryl Watson, how are you? Thanks for joining. Let's see, do you think if I buy an FJ400, I could mix it with Profoto B1s? You know, Nico, there's lots of ways to mix your strobes, different languages, but think about it, it gets really complicated because you don't have one language, so to speak, to unify them, and that's what you need. What's nice about the FJ400 is it will speak Canon and it can work in with the Canon. And I have used the FJ400 in conjunction with my Profoto B1s, but what I do then is I take a Profoto Air receiver, plug it into the FJ400's PC sync socket. Now it's dedicated, but it's speaking Profoto for all essential purposes, and it's then just a straight up manual strobe, meaning I have to walk over, touch it, dial up the power. There's no more TTL, there's no more groups, there is no more rear or high-speed sync. So good question. It's a good strobe. Westcott took a strobe and really dove in with it. The color tonality is excellent. There's very, very, very little color shift, if at all. I'm sure if you put a color meter to it, you could find out, but from my visual testing and portraits, I don't see any color shift at all. It has a great recycle time, good color rendition, good power. The only challenge I've had, to be straight up honest with everybody, with the FJ400 is not if I'm using the FJ dedicated trigger, which works on a multitude of cameras. It's if I'm trying to work with the FJ400 in combination with Canon Speedlights on the Canon RT radio system in a crowded radio frequency environment, such as a wedding in the ballroom where the band is wireless, the lighting is wireless, the mics are wireless. There's so much 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi traffic that it tends to drop off because it's truly not, while it speaks Canon, it's kind of reverse engineered, so it doesn't have as strong of communication within Canon. Conversely, if you took the FJ400 trigger and used it in Canon mode, then the Canon Speedlights wouldn't respond to it. There is no issue with RF interference. It's one of those things where they're trying to make it reverse engineered. So I thought today we would start this session from the beginning, so to speak, engagement session, my thoughts on how I lit it, and printing. Now that we have time, it's a good idea to dig in, go back, print some of your favorite photographs. Again, with prints matter. You know, you don't need a device to look at the images, and I've been getting into a good practice of printing my favorite photographs because they last forever. So I was just recently going through some of my old prints from the Chicago Sun-Times, and I don't need any device to look at them. I have some zip disks from then that I can no longer see those images because I didn't migrate them to a new data. But if you make prints, and these are one of my favorite papers, it's the Hahnemühle Photo Rag, and this is the 17 by 22. So this is Photo Rag Pearl, and that's what we'll be diagramming on. But you have these prints forever. They are archival. They will last. In fact, here's how much prints matter, right? Dig this. Recently, while going through my archive, I found these photographs of my mom from her prom. These are from 1934. Look at that. 1934 2¼ contact prints. They're perfect. Who knows where the negative is? No idea. but I have these memories of her because they're prints. So prints matter. All right, so let me check and see if you guys have any questions. And I'm going to show you the edit. I'm going to show you this session. We're going to talk about lighting. We're going to make a print, and we're going to diagram it. So let me pop into these questions here. JT, always good to see you. Miss Dawn Davis, she's down cooking in the kitchen. Maureen, how are you? I know, I bet you're just kind of going crazy because you're used to being busy, busy, busy. We're praying for our friends and family in Italy that everybody remains as healthy as possible until we get through this and get back to what will be our new normal. So you guys pop any questions in the feed. I'm going to swing you around here and we're going to get into a little editing. And I was just watching Seth Miranda. He gave some really good tips about streaming live and including your desktop and all those sets of things. He's got a higher production value. You know, I've been doing this a little bit more organically, but it works. All right, so right now we're on a tight budget. I'm not going to be buying any new cables, dongles, anything, so to speak, because all of our events are postponed. And at this time, sorry about that, we don't have a lot of new inquiries coming in because folks are wondering what the heck the future is going to hold. So this was from an engagement shoot, and this wedding is one that is coming up. It was supposed to be in May, but now they've postponed it to the fall. Okay, so we could dive in here. So what we're going to do is, here's the photograph that we're going to print out and see. I'm going to show you my workflow for printing. I'm all Canon. Canon in, Canon out, Hanamuly paper. I have a Canon Pro 1000 and Pro 2000 printer. Part of the big thing to getting good quality prints for what you see is what you get is to make sure you calibrate. And I calibrate our computers. Robin Daughtridge, how the heck are you and Phil doing? You know, I was recently on your wall and I was looking at those old photos from your birthday party back in the photo lab, and it brought back a lot of great memories. It was great, glad to see, you know, Bob Katalik and Jack Onahan and Gene Pisek. It just brought back a lot of great memories. So here's a photograph that we're going to print. And what I like to show is this metadata over here. And an image like this, you'd say, why the heck would you light it? Well, we're going to get into the lighting diagram with this after I print it. So the key for me is we'll go into the develop module, and I'm going to show you the image straight out of camera. So right here, I hope you guys can see it with the iPhone, but once we get on the other side of this, I'm going to figure out a way to merge my desktop into this live. But here's the camera, the image straight out of camera. So it's pretty decent to begin with. And then here's with Dawn's final edits. So I do the initial cull, and then Dawn really refines the photographs and finishes them. So you might want to ask, why the heck would you light this? Well, the reason being is this was an overcast day, and we had flat light. There was no specularity. So as I shared, I'm going to get into that once we diagram it. But let's get this sucker printed out. And what I like to do is, instead of printing from Lightroom's print engine, which is okay, it doesn't give me the full control and pull out the best capabilities that the Canon printer has. So what I do is I come over here in our plugin extras and I print with Print Studio Pro. Now it comes with all Canon printers, and I would suggest to do this if you're using an Epson printer or whatever photo printer you're using. They all come with their printer driver program. So once you are here, you have many options that you could do, but it pulls out the best in the shadows, highlights, and color. And I always print with the printer profiles I want. So first thing I have to do is select the printer, which is my Pro 1000, and it is connected wired instead of wirelessly, which it will work wired or wirelessly. I do print it both. And we have our paper size, and you can actually save your profiles or settings, so to speak, up here. So I'm going to add this quick setting that I have for the 17 by 22 Hanamuly Photo Rag Pearl paper. So it'll apply all those things. It has the borders already set up, centered. It's already added the profile. and color matching. And then the soft proofing is enabled, so I could click that on and off, and you'll see a little bit of difference in the reds that's happening. So I can actually get a soft proof and see exactly how this is going to print. So we're going to send this to the printer and let it fly. So when we get over here in the printer, I'm actually letting Print Studio Pro dictate to the printer and give it all its instructions instead of the print driver from Lightroom telling it what to do. I found that I get a better rendition of the print from what I see on the screen by using Print Studio Pro. So let's swing around over here. We've got the Pro 1000, 17 by 22 paper, and that should print out in about a minute. So this is the Hahnemuhle glossy fine art paper. It is Photorag Pearl, 17 by 22. So while that's going to the printer, let me see if anybody has any questions. Flip this around. In fact, we could go around, could go through a few other photos if anybody wants to. See if there's any questions. Robert Earl, thanks for popping in. Jessica Lynn, hey guys. Jay, yeah, it's a cool old Mac. That was my first Mac. The old 17-inch iMac. It's such a classic, I can't get rid of it. It's so cool looking. All right, let's stay on point here. See any questions popping up in there? Not too many questions. So while that's printing, let's come back over here to the computer. And we could go through a few of the images. So it's down in Print Studio Pro. Here's my printer dialog box. So it's sent to the printer and it'll start printing. So we're all good to go here. So now I could close Print Studio Pro and we could go back to the shoot. So here's the entire session. We've shot it, called it, and again, it was a gray day, so lighting is key. For me, I want to have the highlights, I want to have the shadows, I want to bring that specularity. So even when we were in the photo store here, they wanted to go to Steve's Florist in Chicago, there wasn't great light inside. So what I did is I took the FJ400, put it outside on the sidewalk with a full correct to orange gel on it to make it look like sunlight streaming in the window. See these shadows we're creating? Hey Michelle, how's it going? You keeping busy? Is Delaney driving you nuts with the lack of activities going on? But here you can see this would be a very flat scene if I did this available light. So we have the emulation of sunlight coming in through the outside. So I put the strobe, here's a little sun flare coming in, which is actually the FJ400. So what I do is I tend to take a meter reading, look at the ambient light that's there, and I'll underexpose that by one stop, and then I'll throw in my strobe. So we get that separation of tonality. And you can see getting a little flare behind him. But the strobe is outside. It's bouncing off those white walls that were here in the florist shop, filling in their face. This is outside. Again, same thing. You could see the shadows casting in. You could see the highlight in their eyes. If I didn't light this, there would be zero detail in their eyes. And last thing we want is to have raccoon eyes. So this light is about 15 feet away with a long throw reflector to give it that look of natural sunlight. So here I move the light to camera right. So it's a fun couple, fun shoot. But you can see in the background, it is a gray, cloudy, flat day. In fact, we did get a little rain in the evening. So we tend to start our engagement sessions right around an hour before sunset because couples have been loving the twilight photographs. So every one of these has just that kiss of light. Steve's Florist or Flower Market is a great old classic flower market in Chicago. I love photographing in there. It's old school kind of a place. Very cool. All the nooks and crannies in Chicago. Here you can kind of see a little bit of the outline of the shadow because that strobe is camera left, again with a long throw reflector, because the light, the natural light, was very flat. And I love the specularity that we get within their eyes without having anything to be on camera flash. So even here, we did have a moment where I'm facing west, the sun is setting behind them. That's this rim light that's going on here is the natural light, that's the sun. The light that's filling in on their faces is from the FJ400. There's a pullback shot, and I'm actually shooting against the sun. So that's my strobe. Because we have a sport reflector on it, it really throws the light far. Hey Annette, how's it going? How's things in your studio? Thanks for popping in. So I can actually almost overpower the sun. Robert Earl asked, do I have a picture of the setup? I don't, because I'm so engaged with the couple and keeping things moving that I don't want to throw that in there. But yes, Jay, as soon as this print comes out, I will diagram it. I'm just kind of stalling while the print comes out. But you would, again, think, why the heck do I need to light this? Well, because we're pulling in all this detail, and I'm balancing the strong rim light from the actual sunset with the light on their faces, right? It's a nice technique. In fact, we went right into the evening. So this was fun. Did a little light painting on the wall with a red gel with a backlight, and then filled them in with a strobe in the front with a grid on it so that I don't spill light onto the red wall behind them, right? Hey Robin, this is near the Tribune's printing plant, right along this railroad spur. Right up in there is where the Trib printing plant, the Freedom Center, is. It's a great place to shoot. But again, throw a little fill flash in there, and it brings beautiful specularity to it. And we went right into the evening. All right, so let's get the print and get to diagramming. So I'm pulling things out over here. I will bring this around and get this set up so that we could diagram the print, kind of like Bob Ross. Yeah, let's do it that way. So I don't want to get the mic in the picture, so I'm going to flip this guy around. There we go. And let's see if I can get this set up right so I can get things set up. Everybody hear me okay? Things still working? All right. So here's a photo. Get some room. Try and get things square. Good. Looks about right. That look good? Hey Jade, does that look good to you? You guys see the print? Anything funny coming in on the print? No? All good? All right. So let me just pull up the photograph, and I'll share the metadata with you. Jay, all good? Cool. All right. So again, this was an engagement session. The wedding's coming up. And this was created with the Canon EOS R. So here's our camera. It's Canon's full-frame mirrorless camera, right? There we go. The R. And on the hot shoe, we had the STE3 Speedlite transmitter. That's what's doing the communication wirelessly to the FJ400. And this was with the 24 to 70 millimeter lens. So it's 24 to 70 at 70 millimeters. It's the version 3, I'm sorry, 2.8. No, version 2. So Jay, anybody else out there, can you guess, it's kind of hard to tell with the iPhone and the way it reproduces where the strobe is and what we're filling in on. So my normal process, as I shared before, is I take a test shot or I use live view. I find my general exposure in color, and then I'll underexpose the ambient by a stop or two, and then we'll light in with the highlights where I want it. So in this instance, I had the strobe way off camera over here, and this is the big strobe, the FJ400. Now this has a sport reflector on it, which is very long. That has the ability to throw the light at a longer distance, and it really emulates sunlight. Now this was in Canon RT mode. So remember, RT is the radio transmission. So now it is speaking Canon radio. There is an FJ trigger, and then you could put this just in Canon mode, but then you cannot incorporate speed lights. Exactly right, Nick. The shadows do reveal the light placement or the highlights. In this instant, I wanted a little bit of rim light coming in. So you could see on the side of Ben and filling in right on Dana's face, we have this nice separation light, and enough light is spilling forward. We're not getting any hot spots in the Vespa, but it's lighting her face beautifully, and that's what I really wanted to go for. So we were keeping everything low because I didn't want to go into high-speed sync land. So this was ISO 100. And what I mean by high-speed sync is I wanted to keep my shutter speed at 200th of a second or lower. I wanted a narrower depth of field, so my aperture is 4. And my shutter speed is 1/100th. So at 100th of a second, f4, ISO 100, the natural ambient light is about a stop underexposed. Hence that I could get the reflections of the clouds in the window. So there really wasn't very much daylight there. I wouldn't have this nice pop of light. Now, my color for my white balance is 99% of the time always in Kelvin. So in this instance, I was 6,000 degrees Kelvin. I just love the color consistency you get when you're shooting in Kelvin white balance. While I am photographing in RAW, color is the one thing that pretty much is your throwaway, meaning you could really screw up your white balance and correct it later on and not degrade the file. But if you're a JPEG shooter, and sometimes I do shoot live, what I mean live is the camera has the capability to go right to my iPhone, and I could shoot JPEG, and then I know my color and my exposure is going to be 99% accurate, and then we could pop them in, and which I did. Dana's mom is Marcin Glink, an amazing event planner with great events, and she couldn't wait to see the photographs. So as I was photographing with the EOS R, I was sending JPEGs to my phone, and when I had a break, when we were going from location to location, I was just popping some low-res JPEGs to her mom, and she was freaking out. And I like to do that with clients because it just keeps them excited, keeps them engaged. So again, the overall exposure, if I wasn't going to light it, I would probably have to be at 250 ISO. So it would be 250 ISO, 1/100th of a second, f4. That's with no light. Now, if I did that, we would lose all the cloud reflections. We would lose all these highlights. This would just be white, because essentially what we're trying to expose for, if we're just truly available light, is the expression on their faces. So either you go up with your handheld incident light meter, or you use live view to check that exposure out. Whatever you need to do to get there to get a good ambient light exposure. Now, I would sacrifice everything else to get a really good exposure on their face, but because I'm always prepared, I brought the FJ400, I brought 2 Speedlights, I brought a Westcott Halo, and I brought a couple mag spheres with gels and grids. We got a question here from Mark. Hey Bob, fine to be able to catch you live. It's 2 a.m. in the UK. Hey, miss you guys in the UK. Love being over there when we go over there every now and then for the societies. What's happening? I hope you guys are staying safe across the pond. But anyways, this is a really simple setup. It's just underexposing the ambient light by a stop or two and then backfilling it with the FJ400. And in this scenario, it was TTL. But what I was doing is I had TTL, flash exposure compensation. So this is actually ETTL, and then flash exposure comp -1. The reason I did that is because if I was in TTL, straight up TTL mode, and I understand how TTL reacts, with all these dark tones here and in here, TTL at 0 would overlight the scene for my taste. Now we could do this in manual mode, but because we were on the fly, I just wanted to go there, get a couple great moments, and move on. And TTL just allows me to be that much quicker and more efficient. But I truly understand, and I've tested this strobe in TTL with the EOS R and the STE3 in similar situations. So I know what I was going for. I start off at -1. Now, if we were indoors, I would probably go at 0. Keep flash exposure compensation at 0 to get the proper exposure for what I was trying to go for. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. Anybody got any thoughts, questions? Remember, prints matter. It's nice. Another idea for printing that I like to do is after a shoot, create a print that's kind of like your artist proof and sign it and send it to them right out of the blue. There's a certain client that we're trying to get an appointment with that, yeah, we've been sending them some prints, and hopefully that will lead to fruition. But you don't know unless you try. So let's see, any other questions out there? Thanks, Jay, appreciate it. Miss Dawn Davis, Jay asked earlier, so I can see the light on her forehead, his shoulder. How did you not get a catch light off the main light in the red scooter? Good question, Jay. Because the light is not in the front. So if the light was here in front, totally would get a hot spot off the scooter. So the light is actually to the side, far enough back, with a narrow, long throw reflector. It's about that long and about that far open, and it gives the light a nice long narrow beam of light. So we're really just lighting them. This little bit of highlight here and this little highlight here is slightly getting caught from the spill here. These highlights here and these highlights here are from the FJ400 coming this way. So it's definitely intentional that I asked Dana to lean her head a little bit further back than Ben's so that the light could catch her. If they were in perfect alignment, then Ben's head would cast a shadow on Dana's face unless I pulled this light more forward. But Jay, as you brought up, if I would have done that, we would have got a hot spot on the scooter. Miss Marcy Glink, your beautiful daughter, we're just talking about her and Ben's engagement session. How much fun it was, and they were a joy to work with, and we're looking forward to their wedding day. So it's just sharing with people how I use light and how we keep things moving on a shoot. Hope you're doing well and everybody's staying healthy at your house. So, you guys got any more questions? Let's see, I'll scroll through. Dawn's there helping me. Cheryl Watson, struggle with TTL. It's usually too bright. You know what, Cheryl? That's exactly what I was sharing earlier when I said I used ETTL, flash exposure compensation, at -1. And a great way to do this, maybe we could do this while we have time, is you practice. Meaning you set something up in your own lighting lab with a person or a teddy bear. Like I have a white teddy bear, and I put it in front of a black or dark background, and I tested it to see what happens. So if we used a longer focal length, or if we came in closer and we had this nice mix of tones, like right here, TTL at 0 compensation would probably work great.
Marcy says she can't hear.
Marcy can't hear? Anybody else having trouble hearing anything? I got the mic on. Hopefully the battery's, you know, it's, I'm looking at the meter. Everything's going. Maybe your phone's on mute, Mars? I don't know. Anybody else having trouble hearing? Give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear it. Anybody out there? Can you guys hear? Nick Lamb, thank you. Appreciate the compliments. It's, you know, I like to say it's a duck in a barrel when you have a great subject. The photos just take themselves. Brendan, you could hear? Awesome, thanks. So Marcy, maybe check that, click that little volume speaker that's on Facebook. Sometimes it comes in muted. But what I was saying before is the TTL works off of reflectance and tonality. So if we took this flash and brought it to the front and it's straight on, and Dana has this white shirt, and if that was dominant on that tight shot like this, well then we would need to take flash exposure compensation probably up 2/3. The reason being is because your camera and the flash reflect off the bright tonalities, and then they communicate with one another saying too bright, too bright, too bright. A lot of people don't like TTL for that very reason. Now I do have to say Canon with the new EOS 1DX Mark III has really made strong advances in as much as they're tying in the facial recognition with TTL. So it's kind of like doing flash exposure lock before every image you take. And we were just doing some lighting diagrams at, not lighting diagrams, but examples at ProCam a week or so ago before we got the shutdown. And it showed great exposure. So we had the model on a white cyc and everything was working great. But traditionally, what it's doing is TTL is trying to reduce everything to 18% gray. So think about the tonality you want to expose. If you want black blacks, bring flash exposure compensation down. If you're photographing a lot of light tonalities and you want them to be white, you need to bring flash exposure compensation up. If you have a good mix of tones, as I shared if we were like this in a nice horizontal, then you could be flash exposure compensation at 0. But again, if you're not enjoying TTL and working with it that way, then go manual and just always keep your light at a set fixed distance from your subject. That way you could be consistent and lock it in at a certain flash output. I use manual, I use TTL, I use high-speed sync, I use rear curtain sync. You know, whatever gets the job done in the moment that I'm in is what I will use. Brendan, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. You and Sherry loving this beautiful composition. Yeah, it was fun. We actually, this scooter was locked outside of Steve's flower market. I'm like, hey, Dana, Ben, guys, go pop over on there. And we just took like 5 frames and we got out of there. But it was nice because no one was out. I would have asked, Marcy, you still can't hear? Everybody else is giving me thumbs up that they could hear. Good there, good there. Charlie Tuzik, how are you? Good to see you on. Oh, now you can hear. Good to see. David, sound is good. Bob Graves, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Jerry Ward, friend from a long time ago. Miss you in Chicago. Hope all is well with you and your family. Nick Lamb, why TTL versus manual? Again, my philosophy with TTL or manual, so my base exposure, the camera is in manual mode. So that's the camera, right? I always kind of live in manual mode. I will use aperture priority at times. And in this particular situation, the flash was ETTL. And the reason that I do is if I'm running and gunning, meaning we just came over here and said, hey, before we go, you guys jump on the scooter, we're gonna take a couple quick frames and move on. If I'm running and gunning, then I do TTL. But if I'm set, if you guys look at the last one of these I did from a week ago, we were talking about group wedding portraits, oh no, that was 2 weeks ago, group wedding portraits. I'm going to be putting all of these on our YouTube page, Bob and Dawn Davis at YouTube, so you don't have to fish through my feed in Facebook to get to see them. But as I was saying, is if it's a static portrait, then I'm going to be, let me flip this back around, I'm going to be in manual mode with the camera and manual mode with the strobes. So for consistency, portrait's sake, we'll go manual. Meaning if I'm not moving, the subjects aren't moving, then there's no reason to go TTL, and I'm going to lock it in for consistency in light output. Let me pull that up really quick. Let me get to my other drive here, and I'll show you guys the consistency difference. Close that Lightroom catalog, and I'll pull up the last wedding we did. And here we go. Oh, sorry. Run hard drive. All right. So we did have a question last week too, so maybe I could address this question from last week. We'll pull this up. Let the catalog open up here. So this was from our wedding on the 7th. So we'll get to the big group portraits. So in a situation like this, let me bring this in closer. Hopefully you guys can see this and get an idea of the detail and the consistency we can get. So I had let me get that square and steady. Good. All right, so we had a question last week about doing big group portraits. Whoa, sorry. I didn't tighten it down. Hope nobody's going to get seasick. Good. Okay, about big group portraits and what we could do. So this is a real simple lighting setup. Now we did, I want to say, it was about 2 hours of portraits in this hallway in this situation. So it was very easy, and we wanted to use just one strobe. This was used in a Profoto B1, just so we can go. Now in this situation, I would not use TTL. They're going to be the same distance from me, but we're going to keep changing tonalities. So what happens here with ETTL is it would see all these dark tones, the darker environment, and one white dress. So ETTL would bias toward the darker tones, and then her dress would be overexposed. So one thing to watch is the histogram. So you can see this histogram both on the back of your camera and of course in your favorite editing software. This is Lightroom, and you can see that it's not overexposed. That's because I decided to go manual mode for frame to frame to frame consistency. And the reason I chose to use a strobe over a Speedlite in this situation is it's going to be 2 hours of continuous portraits. So we locked it in manual. So the flash output, this was a Profoto B1, and what it was doing was just bouncing off the white wall to camera right. There was a big white wall right by me. So what I was doing is I was again blending the ambient light, so you could see it's a good 2 stops underexposed, and then the rest of the light is me. I didn't want them against a flat wall, and I didn't want it to be a totally black background, meaning if we didn't expose for this area, it would feel very flat. So we're using all the light available to me. So we just set it. Let me turn off this overhead light so we don't get those reflections. Just set the strobe to manual. So this is manual mode on the Profoto B1, and it was at power level 7. And this was the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III, and we're at 100th of a second, aperture 4.5. As the groups got larger, I went for 5.6 or more, and I just would raise the power on the Profoto B1. So think of it this way. However many clicks you do on your aperture, so if it's 3 clicks to go from 4.5 to 6.3, all we have to do is go 3 clicks on the ProPhoto 1, 2, 3 because they're all in 1/3 of a stop exposure increments, up or down. So 3 clicks on the aperture wheel, 3 clicks on the power. Now we have frame to frame consistency. It doesn't matter where we're at, right? We're getting the, oh, that's the other light in the background. Darn it. The sconces. There we go. Let's see if that's better. Oh, you can see that better? Good. So does that answer a question? TTL, manual, flash to subject to distance varies in ETTL. Nick, you are correct. It all comes into play, but more or less it's tonalities that affect ETTL. But you can see we have consistency in color, consistency in exposures, and I'm walking up a little bit closer. These are all done with a 24 to 70. And all the way to the larger groups, we have consistent flash output. This is not a situation to go TTL in because you will be playing exposure roulette with the flash output. It'll constantly be changing. So that's when I would do manual. There is no reason to change. And we got to do some pretty big groups down here, you know. So frame to frame consistency. This is still using one light up into the ceiling, kind of right at that apex where the ceiling and the wall meet. They were white, and then the ceiling was white, so I didn't have to worry about picking up a color cast. If they were not white, you betcha I would be using a large umbrella so we don't pick up a color cast. Because remember, whatever you bounce your light off of, you will pick up that color cast. If these were a warm tone walls, then their flesh tones would be too warm. So this is the wedding, Brendan, that I use the ProPhoto B10s for the triangle of light. And it worked out really well. I still found it very cumbersome to have to use the iPhone to take it out, to turn a light on and off, up and down. I still really, think that Canon's interface and system is by far the best, and it works great. So I would love for Canon to come out with a new Speedlite that would incorporate a 200 watt-second strobe and get away from AA batteries. So hopefully that's in the pipeline. We'll see what's coming next. All right, flip this around so we get a little light this way. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? I will pop a photograph. I'll take a picture of the diagram and I'll post the metadata and we'll throw this up. And if you have any other questions, please drop them in the feed. Hope you guys all stay healthy. Thanks for the thumbs up. Share this out if you feel it's been helpful. Check back here on our Facebook and check out Bob and Dawn Davis on YouTube. I will be posting them there as well. And when things get back to normal, we will hopefully get back to ProCam and going live in the lighting lab from the ProCam studio. Thanks again, everybody. Stay healthy.